2 years ago when I decided some of the final videos I was going to make in yellow version for the original 151 Pokemon, I paired up Golduck and Kingler. It turns out that this was an absolutely terrible idea for a bunch of reasons. Anyway, I still intended to hold true to that plan and just show you why it was a bad idea in a versus video, but then a week or so ago I sat down and I played the first Golduck run, and things did not go how I expected. So much so that I decided to scrap my original plan and get this video out as quickly as I could. I am so excited to show you this playthrough. Remember a long time ago when I played Seel in Pokemon Yellow? If not, let me quickly summarize. I disliked it so much that Seel is now my least favorite Pokemon of all time. Also, if we look at a ranking of all of the water types I have completed in Pokemon Yellow to date, Seel is not doing particularly well. It is third to last with only Shellder and Magikarp behind it. Now, in Seel's defense, I was playing completely differently back then, and Dugong is definitely an exceptional water type. It's in the S tier alongside Slowbro and Poliwhirl. I think when I come back to Seel with my current way of playing, it's actually gonna do decently well. If I don't hold it to the standard of extreme consistency that I had before, it's not gonna be that frustrating to play. Yes, it will require a little bit of luck against the champion, but pretty much every water type does. It's just what holds this typing back. At the very end of the game, there's one trainer that's really difficult to beat. But you know what else can hold this typing back? Not having any water type moves in the early game, which is exactly what Seel has to deal with. It begins the game with Headbutt, making Brock quite difficult. And this is where the comparisons between Seel and Golduck begin, so this is where we should start. By the way, these are the rules for the solo challenge. I have left them in the description. Now, let's get into my first playthrough. For starting moves, Golduck has Scratch, Tail Whip, and Disable. Not a single water type move. And then through level up, it gets Tail Whip, Disable, Confusion, which is confusing, Fury Swipes, and Hydro Pump. Now, I say that Confusion is confusing because Psyduck, I meant Golduck. It seems like it should be Psyduck and that it should be a water psychic type, but no, it's a mono water type. Its name is Golduck, it's blue, and it doesn't learn psychic moves, except for Confusion by level up, which is hilarious because then if you look at its TM and HM set, I thought for sure that it was going to get Psychic. It doesn't get Psychic. What's happening? I thought for sure that it was going to get Psychic. Poliwhirl gets Psychic. It evolves into a fighting type. Anyways, I'm gonna calm down. Golduck does get some good coverage. All of the standard water and ice stuff that we expect from a water type, but in addition to this, it also gets 3 fighting type moves and Dig as ground type coverage, which is going to be so useful during this playthrough against electric types. For base stats, Golduck has 80 HP, 82 attack, 78 defense, 85 speed, and 80 special. This is one of the most well-balanced stat distributions in Generation 1. Obviously, it's not as well-balanced as a Pokemon like Mew, but a 3-point difference between its best stat and its second best stat, and only a 7-point difference between its best stat and its worst stat, really means that every stat here is fairly usable, which is really good for a Pokemon that's going to be using a blend of physical and special damage throughout the majority of the playthrough. However, having stats around the 80s with no stat boosting moves is a little bit concerning for the late game. Usually in cases like this, the only solution is overleveling, which dramatically impacts Pokemon's results in the tier list. For example, I have not re-ranked Blastoise yet, but it does get Withdraw, and then at the end of the game it can just use the badge boost to solve the champion. Golduck is not going to be able to do this, so we might have to put in a lot of training in the mid-game in order to get a fairly consistent late game. But I don't want to get ahead of myself because before that we are going to have to deal with Brock using only normal moves. Golduck has a medium fast growth rate, so it's going to level up fairly slowly in the early game. The strategy against Brock is going to be obvious. I should be using Tail Whip to lower his defensive stats and then Scratch to deal damage. Disable has a niche use against his Onix, but outside of that it's not really helpful. I don't want to use it against Geodude since unlike in Pokemon Red and Blue, it does not know Defense Curl. Its only move is Tackle, and if I disable this, then it's going to start using Struggle, which has a base power of 50 instead of Tackle's base power of 35. Also, when Geodude uses Tackle, it has a 5% chance to miss, but with Struggle, it won't. So in the early game, there's really only one decision to make. What level do I want to fight Brock at? It seemed to me like fighting him at level 10 was just not going to be enough. I was anticipating that at level 13 there might be a slim chance of victory, and then at 15 things would be much more consistent. With a medium fast Pokemon, I'm going to need to fight as as many of the early game trainers as I can. I did skip the lass at the beginning of the forest just because she's really annoying when you're at a low level and she uses Growl with her first Nidoran. But I completed all of the bug catchers as well as the junior trainer inside of Brock's gym. Then I went back to the forest, fought some wild Pokemon, and leveled up to 13. My plan is to accept one reset at this level unless it looks really close, then maybe I'll try multiple times. Okay, here it is. Golduck against Brock. Because I don't yet know my damage ranges, I wasn't sure how many times I needed to use Tail Whip against the Geodude. I went for 2 because then if I get a critical hit or if I land a regular hit, I'm going to be doing roughly the same damage. Remember that in Generation 1, whenever a Pokemon gets a crit, it bypasses all stat changes, including things that positively affect your damage. So if I lowered the Geodude to say -6 attack and then I crit, I would do less damage than a regular hit. And in this case, with 2 drops, I'm able to knock out the Geodude fairly quickly. Golduck has 21 hit points, which is less than half, remaining for the final Onix. It comes in, and then it just starts doing nothing. It's using a bunch of screeches and missing all of them. Finally, it hits, lowering my defense. Then it goes for Bind. Each hit from this move is doing 3 damage. It hits 3 times. Then it uses Bind again, hitting twice, bringing Golduck to 6 health. It follows this up with Tackle. Golduck is left with 1 HP, and Onix has full health. Okay, this battle's looking really rough for Golduck. I'm definitely going to need to train up to level 15. I didn't want to reset though. I wanted to see how much damage Golduck was doing with its first scratch once Onix had reached -6. And it does about a fifth, which is pretty good. At level 15, I assume that's going to be around a quarter or a third, which means the Onix will be so much easier. Then, on the next turn, Onix goes for Bide. Now, there is a weird interaction here. If I choose Disable, it randomly selects one of Onix's moves and then disables it. If it happens to disable Bide while Onix is using Bide, then Onix will not be able to accumulate damage with the move, and it has to wait until the disable counter runs out to continue accumulating damage, meaning it can't attack with anything else in the interim period. I tried to go for this, but unfortunately I disable Screech instead of Bide, and then Onix unleashes energy. Onix goes back to using Bide, so I guess I'll try for the disable strategy again. It misses because disable has terrible accuracy. It actually misses twice, and then Onix unleashes energy. This is just not working for me. I scratch again, taking Onix to orange health. It goes for Bide again, and then I realized I only need 2 more scratches to knock it out, unless I crit, I guess, but I don't, so I attack twice, and Golduck wins with 1 HP remaining. It beat Brock at level 13 on its first attempt. No resets. Okay, that was pretty lucky, but Golduck's gonna continue with the run. I'll have to come back and deal with Brock later. I assume he's gonna force level 15 in my follow-up run. This fight had to be the luckiest possible scenario. There's always one choice to make on Route 3, and that's, do I fight the bug catcher or do I fight the lass? In this case, I think fighting the lass makes sense, since I don't anticipate that Golduck's gonna struggle in the next short section of the game. Misty's a water type specialist, but I'm not gonna need to overlevel for her. Just inside the entrance to Mount Moon, I pick up the TM for Water Gun, and now finally Golduck has access to a same type attack bonus move. It also gets an upgrade to its normal type damage in the form of the Mega Punch TM, which I teach in the place of Disable. With Water Gun, I decided to fight the Hiker. I figured this was just fast experience, and I might as well take advantage of it. At the end of the cave, I crush the 2 mandatory trainers. They are both so easy with Golduck, and then I head into Cerulean City. There's genuinely a choice to make here. Do I want to fight Misty, who will be possible at level 18 with Mega Punch, and I could also teach Bide in the place of Tail Whip? Or do I fight Rival 2 on Nugget Bridge? His team is typically easy with special attackers when you have a special move, and Water Gun should one-shot his Sandshrew so that I can avoid Sand Attack early into the battle. Taking on Misty now would give me access to Bubble Beam, which will speed up my progress on Nugget Bridge. But I also think it might be a little bit more risky to fight her right now, so in the end I decided to fight the Rival next. And I didn't even save in front of him. I was feeling really confident about this battle, especially with Water Gun on my side. Spearow is first. I use Water Gun, and I'm able to 2-shot, avoiding a Leer in the process. Next, he sends in Sandshrew. Okay, Water Gun, get me a 1-hit. And it does, easily. Rattata's next. Water Gun gets a critical hit for a 1-shot, Eevee's last, and I 3-hit with Water Gun, and the Eevee just tries to go for Growl in the process. This fight was so simple, I am glad I didn't waste time saving. By the way, if I did lose to the Rival, I could just black out and keep the experience from the Pokemon like Spearow and Sandshrew. I assume that a Pokemon like Golduck would be losing later into the fight, since it's not struggling against his initial 2 team members. That's why I felt it was safe to avoid the save. With Golduck feeling so strong in this section of the game, I ventured out onto Nugget Bridge and fought some of the trainers, leveling up to 20. But it was at this point that Watergun's PP was getting a little bit low, so I went back to the Pokemon Center to heal up, and since I'm back in Cerulean City now over the next damage rounding threshold, I think I might as well take on Misty. Staryu is first, Mega Punch does more than half, it goes for Tackle, doing 6 damage with a critical hit, and then I knock out her lead. Misty has good AI, so the Starmie is only ever going to use Tackle or Harden. Of course, Harden is pretty annoying if I'm using physical moves, but I can always fall back to choosing Water Gun, and I can go for Bide to bypass all of her defensive boosts. That said, I get a critical hit with Mega Punch on turn 1, then she sets up her X-Defend after my second attack, and while Mega Punch is missing, her Starmie's health is just so low, and she's really not dealing that much damage with Tackle, even if the Starmie gets a critical hit. My third Mega Punch is all I need, and Misty's ace goes down. I've earned myself the Bubble Beam TM, and I teach it in the place of Bide. The rest of Route 24 and 25 are incredibly easy. By the way, I chose to fight this hiker just because he gives a little bit more experience. He's also the first step in getting access to Seismic Toss. Next, I would have to battle the junior trainer and move him out of position. I'm going to talk about Seismic Toss later into this video, but for now I decided to skip it. I didn't think there was any advantage for Golduck. Typically, Seismic Toss is useful as an alternative to Mega Punch against Misty if you don't want to deal with her Pokemon setting up defensive boosts, or you don't want to deal with Mega Punch missing because this move is just so inaccurate. Genuinely, in this section of the game when you have to rely on it, it feels like Dynamic Punch. And for the final trainer of the route, the Oddish Lass, I do have to rely on Mega Punch, but it gets the job done here. Also, her grass types just aren't a threat because they're underleveled and Golduck's 23 by this point. Defeating the Bystander Rocket gives me access to the Dig TM. I'm going to teach this to Golduck, but I'm holding off on it just for now. I only need Bubble Beam to get through Sandy. Luckily, it one-shots all of her Pokemon, so there's no issues. This is where I teach Dig because it gives good damage against the next junior trainer's Raticate. And with it, I am able to one-shot. On the SSN, I'm going to play safely, fighting the Sailor to get access to the rest TM. Next, I grab Body Slam, which is a great replacement for Mega Punch. I'm keeping Water Gun on my set specifically because of its low damage. It might give me the ability to damage a Doduo and then catch it more reliably in a Great Ball. The other alternative to Water Gun for this strategy is keeping Scratch because it doesn't get the same type attack bonus, but I gave that move up a while ago. I fight the Gentleman, grab the Candy, and then take on the rival. He is incredibly easy. I have the most stacked set that I could possibly ask for in this section of the game. Bubble Beam, Body Slam, and Dig. All of the good TMs that are made available to the player by this point. And so of course Golduck just steamrolls him. But what about Surge, who's coming up next? Technically, Golduck has a type disadvantage here. Also, I should mention its speed, 61. Raichu has 65 speed, so Surge is going to move first, giving him the chance to go for Thunderbolt, but I don't want to build him up to be a significant threat. Surge is really bad, he's so inconsistent, and he very rarely is a wall for Pokemon. Really, the only one I can think of off the top of my head is Zubat. It suffers against Surge, but no one else really does. So let's take him on and likely crush his singular team member with Dig. Alright, what's his first selection going to be in battle? Well, it's an X speed, which is completely irrelevant. Golduck uses Dig, and it has enough damage to one-shot. Goodbye, Surge. That looked completely dominant, but I do want to mention the damage range there, which I found out after I completed this playthrough. Dig only has a 57% chance to knock out the Raichu in one hit. Also, Thunderbolt does between 76 and 90% damage with a single attack. There is the possibility that Surge attacks with a move on turn 1, it could be Mega Punch or Mega Kick, and then on his second turn he attacks again after surviving Dig and knocks out Golduck. I'm mentioning this now because I want you to understand that Golduck did get a little bit lucky here, but for the next section of the game it's not going to need luck at all. With Dig and Body Slam, I have a reliable solution to the Wrapping Lass. Dig is able to consistently one-shot the Oddish, which have higher physical defense, and then I can use Body Slam to be more turn efficient against the Bellsprout. The Pokemaniac isn't a problem because Bubble Beam is fantastic against his Cubone, although the Slowpoke does slow things down because because I have to knock it out over multiple turns. The status condition junior trainer is actually one of the more annoying trainers in this section of the game. As of late in my solo challenges, she hasn't caused that many problems, but Golduck has a chance to two-shot both of her Pokemon. Dig has a 63.6% chance to one-shot the first Oddish, and I get the favorable damage roll here, and then against the Bulbasaur, I have a 93.6% chance, which I also roll favorable damage on. So she ended up not being a problem, but I could have failed to one-shot both of her Pokemon, exposing me to annoying things like Poison Powder, Stun Spore, or Sleep Powder. The self-destructing Hiker, of course, is not a threat, and then I make my way into Celadon City. I didn't think it made sense skipping any rare candies with Golduck since it doesn't have a setup move, so I explore the Rocket Hideout and collect myself one additional rare candy before going to the department store. I trade a freshwater to a little girl for the TM for Ice Beam, and then I purchase Golduck 2 Calcium. Since speed is its highest stat, I don't think it needs Carbos, might as well improve my special. Okay, time to try Water Gun against Doduo. The first one that I attack gets critical hit and faints in a single attack, which is annoying. I don't even get good information from this fight as a result. So I come back in, try Water Gun again. This time around, it does not critical hit, but it still knocks out the Doduo in a single turn. So I just decided to go into the next battle and YOLO Great Balls at it until I catch it. Luckily, the Doduo is not particularly challenging to catch, and I do get it. Water Gun no longer has a use, so I put Ice Beam in its place. The rival in Pokemon Tower is incredibly easy. I have great damage against all of his Pokemon. Ice Beam is super effective on the Fearow, Dig is super effective on the Magnemite. I don't really have something good against the Shelder, but it's also a terrible Pokemon unless it goes for Supersonic. That is the only thing that could have messed me up here. I one-shot Sandshrew and two-shot the final Eevee. All of the Chandler in Pokemon Tower are simple because I have access to Dig, and at this point in the run, it really felt like Golduck was performing dominantly. Ever since Brock, the game has felt like a breeze, and I did mention some of the luck against Surge, but at this point in the run I was unaware of that fact. Because of how good things were feeling, I returned to Celadon City and decided to not go down Cycling Road. The reason here is if I can do a little bit more training, fighting Erika first with super effective Ice Beam, then I can go to Cycling Road next and complete the Safari Zone at a higher level, hopefully avoiding wild encounters in the process. To do this, I need to get to level 37 before exploring that area. Then Repels will be 100% effective. Here's the thing though, this strategy is risky, because in order to pull it off, I need to beat Erika with a Golduck that's not going to be over-leveled. I fight the Cool Trainer getting to level 33 over a damage rounding threshold, but this is only one level higher than Erika's highest Pokemon. Knowing that this is a risky choice, I played things safely, taking a save before fighting the Grass-type specialist. Tangela first. I go for Ice Beam, and it gets a critical hit, one-shotting her lead. Alright, that's great. I avoided both Mega Drain and Vine Whip. Weepinbell's next. I go for Ice Beam, and it doesn't one-shot. So now I could get hit by Razor Leaf, Sleep Powder, or Stun Spore. Unless Ice Beam freezes the Weepinbell, which is exactly what happens. Pokemon cannot defrost in Generation 1 unless they're hit by a Fire-type move or the trainer uses a healing item. Erika cannot get out of this status condition. I move on to the Gloom. I'm also not able to one-shot, exposing me to Petal Dance, Stun Spore, or Sleep Powder, but for a second time in a row, Golduck freezes, and I get a free win against Erika because of the status condition. Was this fight luckier than Brock? No, I don't think so, but 2 freezes in a row is just something you very rarely see, especially when each one of them made a major difference in the battle. So once again, luck is on Golduck's side. That's 2 major bullets in this playthrough that it's just completely dodged. Cycling Road is next, and I fight 3 trainers here, leveling up to 36, but not quite 37. I could have doubled down on my training to completely avoid wild encounters in the Safari Zone, but I decided against it. After all, I would prefer to fight better experience yield trainers, which are coming up next in Silph. Before that, at the end of the Safari Zone, I get access to the HM for Surf. For some water Pokemon in the past, it has not made sense to teach this move. Surf really isn't good against the Elite Four, and there's no move deleter in Generation 1, so having it on your set for the late game is not always an advantage. But that's really only a problem with Pokemon that get exceptional type coverage. I'm thinking about Starmie, Lapras, and maybe Gyarados. For Golduck, I think it only makes sense to teach Surf and have access to this damage to continue my training in Silph. I fight people here, including the Hypno Sandwich, bringing Golduck up to level 40 before I take on Rival 5. Surf one-shots Sand Slash. I don't have a good move against the Cloister, but I can just use Surf for special damage and 3-hit it. Because of type effectiveness, the only move it's going to attack a water type with is Supersonic. This has the potential to cause a problem for Golduck, because I could get confused right before the Magneton and then hit by Thundershock repeatedly. However, Lady Luck is once again on my side, and I snap out of confusion right before knocking out the Cloister, and without the status condition, I can just one-shot the Magneton, Kadabra, and Flareon. Giovanni's really bad against water types. That's all I have to say about this battle. I had to decide where I was going next, and I think that the smart choice would have been to pick up Mimic, but I didn't do this. Instead, I just went for Koga's gym, fighting the Tamers for some additional experience, and at this point in the run I realized I should probably have Mimic to steal either Sleep Powder or Psychic to take on the Poison type specialist, but I decided against it. Maybe, just maybe, Surf is going to do enough damage. I don't think so. I'm probably going to have to reset here and then go back and get Mimic. But let's try things. Who knows? Maybe luck will align just like it did against Erika. Okay, Koga has 3 Venonats. They are going to use Sleep Powder if against a water type, and they see that it doesn't have a status condition, which is the case. I did not pre-poison myself for this battle. Also, it is important to note that Surf has a guaranteed 2-shot on all of the Venonats, but it will only 1-shot if it gets a critical hit. Turn 1, critical hit, Venonat goes down, I avoid Sleep Powder. Venonat number 2 does not have Sleep Powder. I go for Surf, getting a second critical hit, knocking it out. Venonat 3 comes in. This one does have Sleep Powder. I don't get a critical hit, it survives, goes for the grass type move, misses, and Golduck knocks it out for free. Okay, that is the perfect luck that I needed. Venomoth is last. I use Surf, it does roughly a third, it's going to take 3 hits to knock out. Venomoth just goes for Leech Life, followed by Double Team. I do miss a Surf, which is kind of bad luck, but the Venomoth chooses Peace, not using Psychic, and I knock it out with my 4th Surf. I was left dumbfounded after this fight. I genuinely did not think that Koga would be this easy, but my confidence was still not that high. After all, even when using water types, Blaine tends to be quite difficult. Whenever I'm playing a run and I'm feeling good, maybe I have 0 resets as is the case in this playthrough, and then I go into Blaine, he always causes my first reset and it's genuinely frustrating. So let's see if the fire type specialist can mess this all up for Golduck. Ninetales is first. I go for Surf. It does a lot of damage. Then Ninetales uses Confuse Ray. Golduck hits itself. Okay, this is not looking great. On my 3rd turn, I'm able to finish off his lead and move on to the Rapidash. But this is where things get difficult for water types, because this Pokemon alongside his Arcanine are both good physical attackers. Stomp can do decent damage to Golduck, although my high-ish HP stat is pretty good here because I'm not taking that much. I finish the Rapidash, I no longer have Confusion, Arcanine comes out, Surf does a ton, Blaine's Ace just sets up Reflect, and then I knock it out. No problems against Blaine. And this victory gives me access to the Special Boost, improving Surf's damage output. I have to go back to Saffron City now, and unfortunately my speed stat is not quite high enough to move first against Sabrina's Alakazam. Before I get to her, I pick up Mimic. I assume that this is going to be very useful for the late game. Now let's take on the Psychic type specialist, who is not very good in yellow. I don't expect her to put out a good performance here, but I save just in case. Abra's first, I'm faster, and of course Body Slam one-shots. Kadabra's next, I'm faster than it. I go for Dig, hoping for more damage, but then she uses an X Defend. So Kadabra is able to survive, and it uses Psychic, doing a lot of damage, and it also lowers Golduck's special. Okay, this is not going well. I finish off her penultimate Pokemon, I move on to the Alakazam, but I got an advantage here. The drop from special actually improved my speed, so now I'm able to move first. However, Alakazam survives, and then it just goes for Reflect. I move first, hit another Body Slam, but because of Reflect, it is not enough damage. Alakazam survives on a Sliver, but Body Slam paralyzes, Alakazam can't move, Golduck moves again and knocks out Sabrina's Ace. Can everyone see the trend that's happening here? We're getting lucky. Against Sabrina, we technically had bad luck early on, but then later into the fight, we got all the good luck we needed to still win and not have a reset. Just how far is this luck gonna take Golduck? Well, I wasn't all that confident with Golduck, so I fought 2 additional trainers inside of Giovanni's gym to level up to 49 before taking on the ground-type specialist. This training is not specifically for this gym, it's more that I'm worried about being under-leveled for the champion. Okay, now let's take on the final gym leader. I assume that this one's going to be pretty simple. Dugtrio is first. The fact that I just leveled up means that I can move first against it and one-shot with Surf. Persian's next. I might speed tie this thing, but it's not really much of a threat. I knock it out with 2 Surfs and move on to the Nidoqueen, which I thought was going to be a one-shot, but it's not. It hangs on red health. And in Pokemon Yellow, both of the Nidos know Thunder. However, it just misses, and then I knock out the Nidoqueen. Nidoking comes in next. It has higher special, so it's also able to survive my hit with Surf. It chooses Thunder, and it also misses. Both of the Nidos missed their Thunders. They could have hit these, done a ton of damage, and also paralyzed Golduck, which then could have led to the Rhydon attacking with something like Earthquake or Rock Slide, but now that I'm faster than it, I just completely destroy it with Surf and move on to the rival. Surf Sandslash, Ice Beam, Execute, then I have to slowly knock out the Cloyster with Surf, although I get a turn 1 critical hit doing massive damage, so it only takes 2 turns to knock out, and it missed a Supersonic in the process. Then Dig one-shots Magneton, Body Slam one-shots Kadabra, and Dig one-shots Flareon. This is a really easy fight. By the way, I am not using Surf against the Flareon because it will do less damage, since Flareon has ridiculous special but low defense. In Victory Road, I wanted to level up to 52 so that I can use my rare candies prior to Lorelei. She's really annoying to beat with water types, especially if you can't 3-shot the Dugong using a move like Body Slam or Surf. Dig won't work since she's likely to use Rest to heal, and I don't want to constantly get caught in a loop hoping for a critical hit. So I fought Victoria Bell, who is the trainer who has 3 grass types in Victory Road, which ended up being a risky decision because Ice Beam cannot one-shot her Victory Bell. But on the theme for this playthrough, Golduck gets lucky. She uses a Hyper Potion instead of attacking with Razor Leaf or Sleep Powder, the latter of which I think would have been much more devastating. Then my follow-up Ice Beam gets a critical hit and one-shots her ace. Perfect. That gets me to level 52, and then I burn all of my rare candies, 11 of them, taking Golduck up to level 63. Now I'm ready for the Elite Four. Dig is useful against Dugong. On turn 1, when it's going to attack, I go underground, and then on turn 2 it uses Rest. Following this, I can just Body Slam to 3-shot her lead and take no damage in the process. This ensures that it doesn't hit me with a stray Aurora Beam lowering my attack, which would make later Pokemon potentially more difficult. For Cloyster, I have to 3-shot using Surf, and I do get confused in the process. But Golduck immediately snaps out of confusion against the Slowbro, mimics Amnesia, and while Psychic does lower my special, it's better than the Slowbro setting up with Amnesia and then attacking with Psychic later on. Instead, I just set up with Amnesia and Slowbro continues to attack with Psychic, which is playing into my current setup. Now, I'm going to have a lot to say about this current strategy in my follow-up playthrough, but for now I felt like it was the best choice. It's actually not. This is the riskier strategy to play against Lorelei, and I didn't know it at the time. But still, I am able to knock out the Slowbro, one-shot the Jinx, and 2-shot the final Lapras, taking a win on my first attempt. Still no resets. This guy's next. He's bad. I use Surf a bunch, and then he loses. Following that, I take on the second member of the Elite Four, Agatha. Dig one-shots the first Gengar. I've taught Blizzard at this point in the place of Body Slam so that I can use it against the Golbat. Following that, Dig the Haunter, Dig the Arbok, and Dig the final Gengar, all of which are easy one-hits. Unfortunately, without Body Slam, I don't have a good move against Lance's Gyarados, but Blizzard is doing almost half. The risk here is that if I use a second Blizzard, then he could use a Hyper Potion. I think what I should have done on turn 2 was use Surf to avoid the Hyper Potion and then finish the Gyarados with another Blizzard, but I didn't do this. It doesn't matter though, because Golduck is lucky. Lance doesn't use a Hyper Potion and I knock out the Gyarados with Surf. Then Blizzard doesn't miss against Dragonair 1, so I avoid Thunder Wave. Dragonair 2, Blizzard hits, knocking it out. Ooh, I even got a critical hit there. Aerodactyl comes in because the Gyarados went for 2 Leers instead of attacking with Hyper Beam. I am now faster than the Aerodactyl and I can one-shot with Surf, leading to Dragonite, which I one-shot with Blizzard. So with no resets, Golduck has cleared the entire game, making it to the champion with a time under 50 minutes in its first playthrough. Is it possible that I make it by the most difficult trainer in the entire run without a reset? That would mean I get a perfect Golduck playthrough on my first attempt. But like I said before, the champion is the most difficult trainer for water types to go up against. This is a really inconsistent battle. To prepare for it, I taught Rest in the place of Mimic. Now, let's see how Golduck does. Sandslash is first, and Surf one-shots. I'm going to be using Dig on Alakazam for physical damage, and Golduck can also one-shot here. Executor follows, Blizzard takes it down under half health, and then the grass type sets up Leech Seed. This move is really annoying, especially when I have to slowly knock out Pokemon in the remainder of the fight. Magneton follows, and Golduck with Dig can just barely not one-shot. The risk now is that Magneton either deals massive damage with Thunderbolt, and then I lose because of Leech Seed on the Cloyster, which I have to knock out slowly using Surf and potentially Rest, or the Magneton could go for the much worse play of Thunder Wave on turn 1, paralyzing me, and then go for Thunderbolt on turn 2. But no, Golduck gets the third option, which I didn't even consider. Instead, the champion uses a Full Restore, replacing Magneton's move, and then I reroll damage with Dig, getting a critical hit, knocking the electric type out in one hit. Are you kidding me? This is how we win? Yes it is. I move on to the Cloyster, I use Surf, looks like it's going to be a 4-hit because of Leech Seed's healing. That exposes me to critical hits from Spike Cannon. I wanted to play around these, so I use Rest, healing up, and then I knock out the Cloyster, moving on to the Flareon, which I have Dig for. But before Golduck hits, the Flareon uses Quick Attack, which gets a critical hit, doing as much damage as possible from the champion's final Pokemon. Luckily for me, I used Rest, and Golduck survives the hit, finishing the battle. I beat Pokemon Yellow with Golduck, with 0 resets in my first run. I got a time of 49 minutes and 37 seconds. I finished the game at level 67, with a game time of 3 hours and 16 minutes. So the reason I compared Golduck to Seel is because after playing this playthrough, I had immediately fallen in love with Golduck. It is the complete opposite of Seel. Where the other water type, I ended the runs and I just hated the thing and never wanted to play with it again. With Golduck, I am so excited to try another run. To me, it seemed like I was inevitably going to have to lose some time in the Brock split, having a worse second playthrough right from the beginning. Because it seemed lucky that I beat him at level 13, and level 15 seems like the only solution that's going to make him easier. If you want to do that, then the strategy should be blocking out to the junior trainer fighting the Diglett over and over again. This is really easy for Golduck to do since it can spam Tail Whip on the Sandshrew and then lose as many times as it needs to. But to get to level 15, I would have to black out to the Diglett 13 times, on top of fighting all of the bug catchers in Viridian Forest, as well as defeating the junior trainer. Then for Brock, Golduck's going to be doing 4 to 5 damage to the Geodude with a single hit, and Tackle from the Geodude does 3 to 4 damage per hit. Against Onix, Golduck will do 2 damage per hit, which is a difference from level 13 where it's only doing 1. But it's not a huge difference since I intend to set up 6 times with Tail Whip against the Onix anyway. The fact that Golduck has a high HP stat means it's going to take a very long time to train against the junior trainer because the Sandshrew is just not going to be knocking me out particularly quickly in the later fights. And if level 15 doesn't provide some massive advantage over level 13, then why would I do the extra 2 levels of training? At level 13, Scratch does 3 to 4 damage and Geodude's Tackle does 4 to 5 damage. By the way, the very top damage roll of 5 damage is extremely unlikely, so the Geodude is going to be doing 4 damage per hit. Getting to 13 for this fight requires 6 blackouts against the junior trainer. And this is where both Zealouspawn and I noticed something. At level 11 against the Geodude, Scratch is doing 2 damage, and the Geodude's Tackle is still going to be doing 4 damage to Golduck. We could potentially black out to the junior trainer just 1 time, and then level up from 11 to 12 for the Onix. This doesn't help with damage ranges, but level 13 doesn't help with them either. So really just getting level 12 in the middle of the fight helps with HP so that we have a little bit more staying power against Brock's final Pokemon. This is the strategy that Zealouspawn sent me, although I decided to go one step further. What if I never black out to the junior trainer? Then Golduck will start the fight against Brock at level 10. Geodude is still going to be doing 4 damage per hit, and I still have 2 damage on regular turns against the the Geodude. I level up now to 11 middle of the fight so that I get a little bit more HP for the Onix, and against it, my base damage ranges are unchanged. This is of course risky, but what I was realizing is that I'm gonna require luck here no matter how I slice this. Even if I go in at level 13, I could still lose. After all, the battle last time around was absolutely brutal. I should have lost. I had 1 HP for like the entire fight against Onix, but I was still able to pull through with a win. And I have the upside that if Onix goes for Bide, I could potentially trap it with the Disable interaction. And if that happens when I'm using Scratch, then I'll be able to finish off the Onix extremely quickly, and it won't matter what level I'm at. So my plan for the early game is fight every single bug catcher in the forest, fight the junior trainer, and then battle Brock starting at level 10. The question is, how long did I suffer doing this strategy before I was able to beat Brock? Well, in my first fight against him, I am taken to red health before the Onix comes in. I level up to 11, giving me 6 hit points for his final Pokemon. And yeah, I just beat him first attempt. I have no resets and get a split that is 3 minutes and 21 seconds faster than my first playthrough. At this point, running Golduck, I have never lost to Brock. I was playing a little bit sloppy in the next section of the game and ran into this trainer inside the Mount Moon. But since my Brock split is quite lucky, and I have a ridiculous time advantage over my second playthrough, I just decided to continue playing. The extra experience from this battle, as well as 2 other accidental battles that I fight during this playthrough, is going to give Golduck enough experience to skip another battle that I had originally rooted into the playthrough. After defeating the Rocket, there's a really satisfying section of bag management where I can teach Mega Punch, Water Gun, and Bide all at the same time. And the last of these moves is important because unlike the first playthrough where I ventured out onto Nugget Bridge before fighting Misty, I'm only going to battle the rival before heading straight into the gym. By the way, with Golduck, I am not saving before this rival. I don't think it's necessary. The first save I decided to take was in front of Misty. After all, things can go wrong here if I just get really unlucky with Bide. But that's not the case for this playthrough. I defeat her very easily, and I am now 3 minutes and 41 seconds ahead of my former time. I also now have Bubble Beam, which is going to speed up my progress throughout Route 24 and 25. Now, let's come back to the Seismic Toss TM. This time, I am going to pick it up, fighting one optional battle in order to pull this off. It doesn't seem like it's going to be an item that's going to be helpful, but Zealous Pawn found a very useful way to incorporate it into the late game. So for now, it's just going to sit in my bag, but it's going to come in clutch later. On the SSN, I am still going to pick up Rest. Zealous Pawn didn't use this move in his original route that he sent me, but during my testing, I found that it just made the champion fight so much more consistent, so I am going to be using it today, even though it makes the final battle of the run extremely slow. Surge is really bad. He's just not going to give Golduck resets unless you get very unlucky. And as we have learned throughout this video, that is not something that's possible for Golduck. I can, however, make mistakes as a player, and I did go into the Rocket hideout and fight the one guy by the poster. This is a mistake. I do not need to collect the candy from this location in order for Golduck to be a high enough level to beat the late game. By the way, I did get unlucky in my first playthrough in one way. I one-shot the Doduo using Water Gun, but now at level 29, I do not one-shot the Doduo with Water Gun, so I can weaken it and then catch it with a Great Ball consistently. On Cycling Road, I only need to fight the biker boss for experience. This gets Golduck to level 33. Silph is next. Machoke Candy, the Rocket with 4 Pokemon that has Raticate, the Reception Rocket that has 4 Pokemon. Then I ran into the guy who has Cubone accidentally. This is what gives me enough experience to skip one of the other Rockets here. I fight the Stacked Scientist, the Grimy Scientist, and then I skip this guy, the Protein Scientist, before taking on the Arbok Trainer. This levels Golduck up to 37, where I use 6 rare candies, bringing it to level 43. The next battle is the perfect illustration of when everything goes wrong. I get confused by the rival's Cloyster, and then against Magneton, Golduck hits itself 2 times, tanking Thunder Shocks in the process, and one of them's a critical hit, so Golduck gets its first reset of the entire video here. This should not happen. I have guaranteed 1-hits on the Magneton, Kadabra, and Flareon, and because of this, in most cases, as long as Supersonic doesn't mess me up, I should not lose here. Once Silph is complete, I backtrack to Erika at level 45. Ice Beam has guarantees against all of her Pokemon, so this is trivial now, even though I'm much slower than I was beating her last time. For Koga, the solution is Mimic Psychic. Then, I have guaranteed 1-hits on all of the Venonats. I just have to wake up from Sleep Powder on turn 1 soon. If that happens and I don't get my special dropped, then I sweep his team with Psychic and it's an easy battle. There's potential for a reset here, but Golduck has very favorable odds. To make Blaine as consistent and easy as possible, we can use 3 rare candies before him, going from 47 up to 50. Both Dig and Surf have the exact same chance to one-shot the Ninetales, 37.8%. 100%. Because of this, it makes sense to use Surf since it only takes 1 turn to execute. Surf 1 hits the Rapidash, and I 2-shot the Arcanine. Against Giovanni, take note of Golduck's speed stat, 133. It's tied with Dugtrio. The reason this happened is because I was skipping some overworld vitamins to try to save small amounts of time. I personally don't think this is worth it. If the Dugtrio moves first and then uses Sand Attack, messing Golduck up here, that's unacceptable, when I could have spent 5 seconds picking up a Carbos and using it. The damage ranges for this fight aren't ideal at level 51. Guarantees on both Dugtrio and Rhydon. Then a 2-shot on the Persian, a 76.4% chance on Nidoqueen, and a 61.4% chance on the Nidoking. The Zealous Pawn's solution for this fight I think is the correct play if you're using my rule set. Mimic Double Team from the Persian, set it up once for badge boosts, then you have 1 hits on both the Nidoqueen and the Nidoking, and the fight is completely trivial. Also, the Persian can't 2-shot when using Slash, so really the only way to lose is if it sets up too many double teams and then you can't attack it. That said, I didn't want to go for double team, instead I just went man mode and attacked all of his Pokemon. It works out for me in this case, the damage ranges are good enough. Okay, one concession this route makes is it teaches Ice Beam earlier into the run, and then I have to have a slot for Mimic so that I can beat Koga consistently. I don't want to have to rely on 2 critical hits and a Sleep Powder Mist to get by him. Because of this, I no longer have Ice-type damage for this fight, so I'm relying on a 2-shot on the Execute. If it goes for Stun Spore, I will reset right away, but I can also roll Solar Beam or Leech Seed, so it's fairly favorable. I just 2-shot, and from there the remainder of the fight is really simple. Okay, Lorelei, this is where we need to talk about the Amnesia strategy. I reset here way too many times. I went into this fight with a sub 40 time, and I was on track to get something under 45 minutes, which I thought would be a decent result for Golduck in this video. Unfortunately, Lorelei completely ruined my hopes and dreams. Number 1, at the lower level when using Body Slam, it does between 30 and 35% damage. This means it has a 46.9% chance to 3-shot the Dugong, leaving Lorelei opportunities to attack with this Pokemon or draw out the fight. Making the fight less consistent is the fact that I have to 3-shot the Cloyster when using Surf, giving it time to set up with Supersonic, which can mess me up when using Mimic to steal Amnesia against the Slowbro, giving it time to set up Amnesia while I am not increasing my special stat. For this reason, in a lot of cases, I just lost here while trying to set up. Even if the Slowbro goes according to plan, I can move on to the Jinx with health that is too low and then get knocked out by moves like Double Slap or Thrash. This should only happen though if I'm not making player error, because Body Slam after setup with Amnesia has a 46.4% chance to knock out the Jinx, so I need to be using Dig against it, which will KO with both a regular hit and a critical hit. But then I make it to the Lapras, and usually Golduck's health is low. I need to be able to survive either Body Slam or Confusion. If I can do that, then I pull through with a victory. And there's even a roughly 14% chance that I don't 2-shot the Lapras when using Surf. I ended up taking 4 resets here, and for me it felt like it completely killed the playthrough, but I decided to continue just to see what Golduck could do. At level 56, the damage ranges against Agatha are not outstanding. Dig 1-shots both the first Gengar and the Haunter, but it has a 46.4% chance on the Arbok and a 72.1% chance on the final Gengar. There is the possibility to get a reset here, but overall Golduck's odds are much more favorable than they were against Lorelei. Lance is pretty annoying in this playthrough if the Gyarados doesn't use a single Leer, because then I don't outspeed the Aerodactyl, and if my health is low, it's just gonna knock Golduck out. I took a total of 3 resets here before moving on to the champion. This is where Golduck's moveset is initially going to appear to make no sense. Surf, Mimic, Seismic Toss, and Rest. By the way, without picking up Carbos in the overworld, I am also speed tied with the Alakazam, making things just a little bit more difficult for myself. Let me explain why Seismic Toss is better than Body Slam for this fight. Surf 1-shots Sand Slash, and I have a 30% chance to 2-shot Alakazam when using the Water type move. So I don't need physical damage against it, and I don't really care about taking care of it quickly. If it uses Kinesis, I can just reset early into the fight and try again. Then, once I make it to the Executor, I'm gonna Mimic Hypnosis, because I need a way to play around both the Magneton and the Cloyster, which I can't 1-shot, even if I Mimic Earthquake. The Magneton is just too bulky in this game, and Golduck is too underleveled. Having Rest here allows me to heal against the Executor when all it's using is Leech Seed, and I can use Seismic Toss for consistent damage to slowly knock it out. Also, the fact that Seismic Toss has a lot of PP is an advantage here, because I was genuinely considering using using a lot of PP ups on my other moves to ensure that I could get by Cloyster when using Surf and Rest in combo. But that approach ends up being just way slower. Instead, I can use Hypnosis on Magneton, 3-shot with Surf, and then 3-shot the Cloyster using Seismic Toss, even as Leech Seed is slowly healing it. Also, I'm going to squeeze in 1 rest just in case Spike Cannon gets a critical hit. Then Seismic Toss knocks out the Cloyster. This is why it's so important for this fight, because once I make it by both the Alakazam and the Magneton, I want to ensure that I'm going to win. Flareon at the end of the battle isn't an issue, and Golduck gets its second playthrough time. 48 minutes and 37 seconds. It was 1 minute faster than my first playthrough, which for me was really disappointing. I of course had to do a third playthrough. I couldn't hold myself back. This time around I picked up Overworld Carbos, so I am faster than Giovanni's Dugtrio, and I am also faster than his Persian. I do want to mention here that there is the possibility of using Seismic Toss during the entire Elite Four. I could fight 4 additional trainers during the playthrough, grab myself the Hideout candy, and then use 2 rare candies prior to Lorelei. This would get me level 57 for her, which means I can use Seismic Toss to 3-shot the Dugong, and I no longer need Body Slam for that battle. By the way, Body Slam has a lower chance to knock out the Dugong in 3 hits than Seismic Toss does, so that's why I was considering this approach for Lorelei. Then the Dugong can never do anything to mess me up. Also, the slightly higher level for Cloyster does improve my chances to 2-hit, although not by much. It only goes up to 15.8%. This is where I'm going to give massive credit to Zealous Pawn, because he figured out a strategy that I have never used before in Pokemon Yellow. Instead of stealing Amnesia from the Slowbro and taking time to set up, giving it the opportunity to do a lot of damage with Psychic, instead I'm just going to knock out the Slowbro as soon as I can. If I have taken damage from Supersonic or from Psychic earlier in the battle, this strategy can fall apart when the Jinx comes out, which is what happens in my first attempt. Golduck hit itself in confusion, Slowbro went for Psychic not once but twice, leaving me on red health by the time Jinx came out, and I didn't have enough to survive even a double slap. But that's not always going to be the case. In the second fight, I arrive at the Jinx with green health. Then I use Mimic to steal Lovely Kiss. After that, I knock the Jinx out, move on to the Lapras, use Lovely Kiss, and then slowly take care of it. Against Lance, while his Gyarados does use Leer, it ends up missing. It goes for Hyper Beam after that, which does about 1/3 in damage, but this is enough for me to survive an attack from Aerodactyl, so I have no resets here either. Still only 1 going into the fight against the champion. Even though I'm a water type, this fight is really consistent with the Seismic Toss strategy, provided I make it by the Alakazam and the Magneton. I get the luck I need for Alakazam, and then Hypnosis works on Magneton. So, Golduck, in its third playthrough, pulls through with a time of 44 minutes and 5 seconds, with only 1 reset at level 60. This run got a game time of 2 hours and 52 minutes. Just before the tier list, let's talk about the Secret Oak battle. I have genuinely considered removing this from my Yellow videos, and in some cases even intentionally left it out of Versus videos when I felt like it ruined the pacing. The reason is, with most Pokemon, this fight is almost identical to the champion battle. For Golduck, I still need to mimic Hypnosis from the Executor and then just hope during later stages of the fight that I'm going to put Pokemon to sleep, like the Venusaur. I just need to avoid Razor Leaf and Sleep Powder. It took 3 resets, but eventually Golduck pulled through. Now let's get back to the most important part of the video, ranking Golduck in the tier list. By the way, when I add Golduck to the tier list, we are now going to have 130 Pokemon ranked. Only 21 left to go, and over the next 3 months, I am going to complete all of them. With a time of 44 minutes and 5 seconds, Golduck is able to join all of the other water types in the A tier. It earns itself a placement just behind Primeape, ahead of Tentacruel and Wartortle. By the way, someone's going to ask, why is Alakazam's time 44 minutes and 24 seconds? It's because it doesn't start with confusion in Pokemon Yellow. It's one of the weirdest changes from Red and Blue. It only has Kinesis and Teleport at the beginning of the game. I've got a video comparing Alakazam's performance in Pokemon Yellow and Red, so check that out if you're curious what the difference is. So water types in Pokemon Yellow, they are still filling out the A tier, but I think there are still a few contenders left over that might just get S tier placements. I've got to re-rank Omastar and Kabutops, and I also still have to play Kingler, the Pokemon that in the end didn't make sense to go up against Golduck, and you'll see why before the end of the year. If you support me through Patreon or YouTube memberships, thank you so much, it means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.